Vimalakirti and Manjushri. Manjushri is a wise yet unpretentious bodhisattva. He has a fair respect for Vimalakirti, whom he describes as hard to answer, etc., and altogether accomplished in insight and skillful means. Vimalakirti greets him with the words, "You come well, Manjushri. With the mark of no coming, you come, and with the mark of non-seeing, you see." Manjushri replies in a similar vein, as if to show that he understands what Vimalakirti is up to, but then he casually suggests leaving the matter aside and goes on to ask about the householder's illness. It is as if he is prepared to go along with Vimalakirti's dissembling in order to generate the discussion which will lead the assembled throng to enlightenment. The plot of the narrative is complicated by the fact that just before Manjushri's arrival, Vimalakirti had magically emptied his room of all the people and objects which it contained. This was symbolic in itself and gives rise to a discussion of its own. In the meantime, Manjushri plays the game and asks Vimalakirti about the cause of his illness, how long he has been ill, and how long his illness will continue. The last part of the question seems to imply that Manjushri already recognizes the illness to be deliberate. Since the reader of the sutra already knows that the illness is feigned, it is not surprising that Vimalakirti now relates his illness to the sickness of all living beings. His illness arises because of the ignorance and craving of the world. When living beings are no longer sick, the bodhisattva will also be free from sickness. The illness already designated as skillful means is said to arise through great compassion. The workings of skillful means and the workings of compassion, it may therefore be noted, follow the same track, namely that, quote, the bodhisattva enters birth and death, that is samsara, for the sake of living beings, close quote. If we ask what the compassion of a bodhisattva is like, the simile used in this context is that the bodhisattva's attitude is like that of a father and mother toward an only son. Quote, when the son becomes ill, the father and mother become ill too. If the son gets better, they become better too. It is the same with the bodhisattva. He loves all living beings as if they were a son. If the living beings are ill, then the bodhisattva is ill. If the living beings get better, the bodhisattva gets better too. Close quote. The sickness of Vimalakirti, it is stressed, has of itself no characteristics or marks, and is not dependent upon the body, mind, or elements. Yet the sickness of the bodhisattva is aligned with the sickness of the living beings, which does arise because of these. Thus, the sickness of Vimalakirti had two facets. On the one hand, it bears the marks of the sufferings of the world, but on the other hand, it has no marks. As a skillful means, Vimalakirti's illness both follows the lines of the suffering of the world and bears within it the latent resolution of this suffering. How is such a resolution possible? Or, as Manjushri has asked, how is a sick bodhisattva to be consoled? How is he to tame his mind? The explanation continues along the lines indicated. Insofar as the sickness arises through ignorance and craving, and insofar as the bodhisattva is sharing in the problems of all existence, it is possible to speak of it as if it were real. In this sense, it is said that the suffering arises from distorted ideas, and from passions, and from clinging to self. But ultimately, there is no self, and therefore the bodhisattva who is taking all beings with him should relinquish the idea of self and the idea of living beings. Not only that, but having used the idea that the body is just made up of many elements or factors combining with each other, his critical attention should now be turned to these factors, which he ought not to take more seriously than one takes the idea of self. After all, these factors do not know each other, And when they arise, they do not say, I arise. And when they cease, they do not say, I cease.